Good morning. We're both a little bit nervous after that wonderful presentation. It's actually interesting, some commonalities that already, when I look at ours and the two that have been previous, that there are some things that will be themes, I'm sure, throughout the action research. I'd like to introduce ourselves. I'm Kathy Northam. I'm from Albury Out of School Hours. We run vacation and after school care. And this is my wonderful colleague Lauren Weeding, who also works with me at the program. We average about 45, 50 children at both our after school and vacation program. That's all we can take. So we're usually pretty chock-a-block. We're booked out within a few hours during vacation care. Albury City have 3 out of school hours services. In Albury itself, we're just about the lone providers there. I think that, what was I going to say? I can't remember, but anyway. Albury City Council sponsored, sorry, I was going to just mention that vacation care is a little bit different. We're fortunate to have 3 programs in vacation care. 2 of the programs run junior programs, so fortunately during the holidays we can actually challenge our older children. They have a site-specific program, which is our third USH. So they do 10 plus programs, so they do 10, 11, 12, 13 and sometimes up to 14-year-olds that have a different program. So we take the juniors and the big kids go over there, and we are absolutely blessed. As some of you know who try and engage those 10, 11, 12-year-olds with children who are just transitioning to school is a real big challenge for the sector. Okay, I'd like to also acknowledge NOSHA for their support for this action research project, and to the Australian Government Department of Education for their support in allowing small programs to look at things that interest and challenge them on a day-to-day basis. I guess I'll just do a quick background to our topic and then talk about what we did. Lauren will do the methodology and then we'll go through the action research plan. We actually haven't done any slides, so you can all take we've got a couple, but then really just outlines. We're actually going to talk to a script, so I do apologise if I lose my place and do this. So I guess the background to our service applying for the action research was that, like many of you, I guess that we were getting a lot of calls from families with children with additional needs. Now, we do cater for children with additional needs. Mostly they perhaps go to aspect school, or they are accessing mainstream services at school. But these are from families with children with profound disabilities. And we felt that they were coming in more frequently, and we were becoming ourselves quite distressed and frustrated that we were gently saying no, that we just could not provide a service for their children. So anecdotally, we felt that this seemed to be increasing. And so what we then decided to do was really stop and listen. And it was one particular phone call I had from a parent with a child with a profound disability who who told me the story of her son who never mixes with neurotypical children. And I thought to myself, this is actually, it was just tragic, really. And that she couldn't attend work. She couldn't go to work because her child could not get vacation care and was limited in his respite hours through the local disability service. And so we actually, as a service, pondered, how is this fair that this child is using his respite hours? They don't claim childcare benefit, they don't claim childcare rebate. She's trying to go to work. So we're trying to work out how is this equitable for this particular child, and what could we do about it as a service. So what we present today is not it's not rocket science or brain surgery or whatever. It's actually stuff that you're probably already doing. But through the Action Research Project, we were fortunate enough to actually be able to stop, take a deep breath, and actually look what was really happening, some of those anecdotes, some of the stories, what really was going on here. So the Action Research allowed us to go on a journey as a service and look at our role in providing leisure and play-based experiences for these children with profound disabilities. So as I say, this is a really personal journey, but it's wonderful that we can present it to you today. So our program, our Action Research Project, we call Destination USH. The reason being that USH was the destination, But in actual fact, there was many ways to get there. You could jump off on lots of off-ramps. It was a whole different mindset of how to look at it. We think, oosh, they have to come in one way. They actually don't need to come in one way, and it was something that we discovered during the Action Research project. We began hoping to create... I'm going to go to the next one, Lauren. Do you want to do this? Sorry, we have got a couple of slides. Thanks, Robin. Okay, so our question was, we were hoping to create more meaningful, inclusive practices within our program, and we wanted those children with additional needs who didn't usually come to us because of their profound disability or because of our perception in many cases. We wanted them to come and spend time with us and our neurotypical children and our neurotypical educators. An important aspect during this action research was for us to understand the lack of availability in the community. And one of the other things was to get to know educators, that educators needed to get to know these children and the families on a better level. And so we were looking at ways in which we could do that. However, throughout the Action Research project, as you all know, our question, we had to frame and reframe that question many, many times. And it took us on a journey that we were not predicting. And we had to try and keep up with where we were going and being okay that it was there, and then it was there, and then it was there, and then it was there. So that was reframing the question all the time. So our initial thoughts in regard to the Action Research project were gaps in availability of mainstream services. However, we met with disability sectors within the community, we met with local government departments, we met with families, and we started to believe that really there weren't any real gaps. The gaps were in our perception, and so we really then had to go, okay, there's gaps in this, how do we overcome that? How do we get rid of those barriers which say, whoa, don't reckon we can do that? And we all get families that turn up with their children, and we just, to be honest, sometimes it is overwhelming, and it's just another layer of complexity on an already complex job. So we acknowledged that the starting question needed to change, and it did so a number of times. The change and learning that took place within our action research. Change and learning is central to action research. So that change, that tumultuous, never-ending change, is what action research is about, and we needed to go with that. To assist us in making sense of these changes, we drew on Friedman's planned changed diagram. Now, you are all fortunate, we've provided a handout, cha-ching, because this was so complicated, but when you put it into a framework that was provided at our training, you don't have to read it now, but I'll go through it. But what it did is actually gave us a structure to see where all those tumultuous changes took us, and it actually brought into focus how we could actually make sense of what was going on. So using the diagram, we were able to track our current understanding, the construction of our new knowledge. We were able to take planned action and then evaluate the outcomes. These cycles of change flowed from one to the next. They weren't always in order. Sometimes we had to go back and forwards between the cycles. But it allowed us to visualise some new changes and new understanding. And this is called third person change. And so it actually allowed us to see new ways of thinking. We could then develop training. We could develop new processes within the service itself. And we could also carry them out, take action, and then evaluate the action that we had taken. So it was a really that's why I wanted to give it to you guys, because that in some aspect, do you think, Lauren, was the most important way of understanding what it was that we were trying to do. It allowed us to bring into place systems thinking, which was another term that we hadn't, which means that we need to look at systems and how we change our systems to make change. So if you have a quick look at that plan change diagram, thank you, Lauren. It just shows what our initial question in the triangle was, in the box was, but it actually said what it was that we were trying to do. So we're investigating children with additional needs attending our service. And our overall aim, up in the circle at the oval at the top, was that all children had equal access to OOSH. So we developed knowledge of the sector. We went into the first cycle, which we attended public forums, met with government departments, we linked with local early intervention, we had discussions with families, we met with local respite services. Then we evaluated what happened in all of those meetings, what we learned, what we could see was happening, what needed to happen, and that took us up to the top circle of change, which looked at building collaborative partnerships. That we actually, it dawned on us that we could have two different ways of attending USH for some of these children. Some of the children could come via their disability service and come to us as visitors, and some we could support to enrol at our service to come via USH, we call it. So if I say via USH, you know it's coming normally through USH. The other one was coming via disability service. So we came up with the metaphor of destination USH. So the destination with us was USH. Whether or not you attended via the respite service or via USH, the destination was still to come and have play and leisure experience with us. So then we evaluated that and found the flaws and the barriers to why that wasn't happening and how we could actually streamline our processes and practices within the service. We identified at that point that we did need deeper knowledge of the children. So we flowed into the bottom cycle of change, where we developed an About Me. Lauren developed a fantastic About Me form for the children to fill in with their parents, which gave us some really in-depth knowledge about children, how they self-regulate, how we can help them with their anxiety, really things that you don't usually put in. And so we could focus it on children with profound disabilities to get some feedback from the families. We actually found through the cycles of change that we needed to support the families to enrol. Some of these families have very complex families, and you all are aware of that. A lot of them have been beaten over the head with paperwork and doctors' forms and hospital forms, and so it was just a way in which we had to hold their hand to fill out the paperwork we were required. And normally you will support families in doing this, but this took emails, it took phone calls, it took face-to-face to get enrolment forms completed. Normally, if a family don't fill it in correctly, you send it back and they send it back wrong, you go, you can go on my waiting list or whatever. These families you can't do that to. They really need extensive support, and that was identified through the process that we went through. We got some specialised training for the educators at our service, and it was targeted about inclusion and more the philosophical reasons why inclusion is important, and it was to challenge our own beliefs and assumptions. So that was external training from one of the local early intervention providers. So we did all those sorts of things. Then we evaluated where we went with that and what we needed to do from that point. The top circle of change is where we are now, and it doesn't have an ending because we're still doing it, and it will roll out for some time, and we're in the process. We've just advertised, and I got the idea from the girls in Queensland, who I've yet to meet, about advertising for disability workers. And I think one of the beauties of having no qualifications in the out-of-school hours sector is that it enables us to, rather than get childcare workers on our relief staff, we can actually get disability workers on our relief staff who come to us with a whole different skill set, who can mentor us and build capacity with our staff in ways which we didn't know were possible. So currently we've interviewed, and I've put 5 on our relief pool for the entire Albury City casual pool. So we're hoping that will work. It will be win-win for everybody. So at the moment we're in that top circle of change, and as everyone knows, it's never ending, is it? You just keep going. So that is that's on your table. That if you are welcome to take them home, that's sort of why we did them, because we just felt that was probably one of the most important aspects of what we did. So just very quickly, I just wanted to talk to you briefly about the levels of change that we work through at the service. There's 3 levels of change that takes place when you're working with action research. First order change is that we actually identified gaps in services for children with disabilities within the community and gaps within ourselves for children with disabilities. Second order change is it wasn't enough to know about the gaps. We actually had to offer alternate ways of thinking and alternative processes and procedures that would allow children to come to our service. But the most important change, I think, is the third order change. And third order changes are about us. And the service had to question each of our own assumptions and our own points of view. Hence, the picture on the back of that is of one of my children hanging upside down on the monkey bars or doing a headstand or something. It was a bit of a visual metaphor for how we had to try and look at this differently. As we've worked through the third order change, we've grown in our knowledge and understanding of what inclusion truly means. We're not experts at it, and philosophically, I wonder if there is any such thing as inclusion. But as we deepened our understanding of children and their families, we began to question whether it's our personal attitudes, values, and preconceived ideas that are actually the biggest barriers to access at all. Now, Lauren's just going to go through the methodology because she's really good at all that stuff. So I'll leave you with my Lauren. There you go.
After collaboration with an external additional needs service, we created the concept of ways children with additional needs could attend our service. This resulted in two options: a child attending as a visitor with their carer through respite from their external service, and a child attending as an enrolled child, having one-on-one care with one of our educators and with us applying for flexible support funding to assist in this. Prior to this trial occurring, we had been working in an ad hoc way over 12 months with 7 families to varying degrees of success. The Action Research Project focused our thinking and allowed us to determine that educators required training on how to work with additional needs children, and also the need to collect more information about the child. All educators who were working during the trial period attended specialised inclusion training from a local early interventions organisation. This introduced us to ways we could communicate, assist and encourage children with additional needs while they were spending time with us. From here, we came up with 3 types of questionnaires to gain feedback on the 2 ways children with additional needs attended the service. One was for the USH educators who worked one-on-one with the child, one for the families of the child attending, and one for the respite carer who came with the child via an external agency. During discussions, we decided that we needed to know more about the child with additional needs from their perspective prior to their attendance. The About Me page was designed and sent to families. Although the children could not fill these in themselves, with the assistance of their families, these were completed and returned on their first day of care. After the children had attended, the questionnaires were handed to the relevant people and were returned to us over the following few weeks. Overall, our USH educators who worked with additional needs children indicated that the About Me page was a positive idea. It assisted them in having some insight regarding this child's likes, needs, and ways they could assist them in feeling comfortable within our environment. Communication with the child still proved to be a barrier during the day, and encouraging them to join in with other USH children proved to be another. Surveys returned from respite carers from the external agency were based on their impressions and expectations from attending the centre. Both saw the child's interactions with other USH children as a positive and recognised that large groups and noise created barriers for the child wishing to participate with USH children. Suggestions of individualised planning for the child from USH was suggested, as well as funding being allocated so the child could attend more frequently, or another child and carer from the external agency attending on the same day. Surveys returned from the families also showed that they hoped for their child to be able to attend USH on a more regular basis, as well as receiving funding to assist with this. They felt their child's interactions with neurotypical children were important to their child's development and learning, as well as allowing them to enjoy a mainstream service. Due to the children attending mostly being non-verbal, we opted to ask their parents if they could tell if their child enjoyed coming to USH. Some of the responses included that their child's behaviour was different to a school day when told they were attending USH, that they were getting dressed and being ready to come to USH by 6:30 a.m, they were becoming physically excited, moving their arms and legs when they realised they were being driven to USH and not school. These anecdotal ways of collecting information from the children were taken into account alongside the questionnaires we received back to gather our findings.
Just to briefly talk about our findings, the most rewarding aspect findings during the trial was that children with additional needs really wanted to come and play with us. They absolutely adored it. Yes, 6:30 with their backpacks ready to go and trying to say, no, we're not going till 8:30. And that their families were really keen for their children to attend mainstream services. There were barriers around enrolments and how difficult that was for some families that were very vulnerable and some families that were exhausted with how much stuff they have to do when you have a child with a disability. These families did require intensive support, and we need to put mechanisms around being able to do that, from enrolment forms to working out days in which the children can attend. Another finding was we realised that by continuing to develop our own capacity to work with additional needs children, they and other children can continue to attend via USH, enabling families to gain access to the much needed childcare benefit and childcare rebate and inclusion support funding that they actually have a right to have. They shouldn't be using their minimal respite hours, which they may get 20 hours a month, to come to an 8-hour USH day, and there's half of their respite for the entire month has gone coming to a service that everyone takes for granted. It's you robbing Peter to pay Paul. However, this is not the only way we can continue to support children coming to USH. We can continue to partner with local disability service, and they can bring their children as visitors when that works out for us all. They can come with their carers and provide their own one-on-one care to have some time engaging with play and recreation activities. Our USH team, one of the findings was our USH team grew in their acceptance and understanding of each child, and they saw their inclusion as a positive. And I must say that from me, who it sometimes all gets too hard and I say no, to someone who's actually embraced it. And when the challenges came of one of the particular children slapping down some of my other children over a period of 2 hours, it actually didn't faze me. I think before the Action Research Project, he would have gone home. But this time it didn't. We managed it, and because it was all about that was all about me and me backing off and being okay with it. And I think that the action research certainly personally taught me an awful lot. So I guess we've recognised that we need to employ specialist disability workers, and that's what we're working on at the moment and have just implemented. This is also going to assist the inclusion of children with additional needs in our service and mentor staff build capacity. In conclusion, I just wanted to leave you with the definition of disability that comes from the World Health Organisation. Their definition consists of 3 parts. Part 1, impairment, which is a personal attribute. The other 2 parts are activity limitation and participation restriction. The first part is a personal attribute. The last 2 parts depend on the context in which the child is in. We can help with activity limitation and participation restriction. That the context in which that takes place at USH is up to us. So it's up to us to do what we can to diminish their disabilities, not increase them. So thank you all very much. Good on you, girl!